everybody, and welcome to another episode of Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. I'm Ken Coughlin, and we have two new guests this week that I'm going to proudly introduce. Seated to my right is Liz Carper. Liz has worked for the federal government for almost 30 years. Here at Trinity, she serves on the worship team, and in the past has been part of the Passion Play, which I, as the director, am very, very grateful for. And the Women's Ministry Board, as well, has led a number of Bible studies. She is a wife and a mother with 2 adult sons. Thank you very much, Liz, for coming along.
Thank you.
And seated to my left, we have Greg Derwart. Greg is the Managing Director at the Maryland Department of Commerce, heading up the administration team in the Governor's Statewide Customer Service Initiative. He has 2 daughters and a wife, and they all came to Trinity in around the same time I did, actually. I think around 2010. Mm-hmm. And he's on the contemporary worship music team. He plays a mean axe. And he also has been part of the Passion Play men's group. He is the current chair of the call committee, and he has been small groups, a worship assistant, and a deacon. Thank you very much, Greg.
My pleasure.
Now, I gotta tell a story that Liz doesn't know before we begin about Greg. All right? So, Greg and we came here around the same time, and it was probably about 2 years after we'd known each other. And you came to a Bible study that I taught here a while ago, an apologetic study. We met, I think, really met there, and then we see each other in church. And then eventually, I don't know how we came up in the conversation, but Greg and I were talking for a little bit. And for some reason, we started talking about where we worked.
Right.
And he asked me where I worked, and I said, well, I'm downtown Baltimore. He says, well, I'm in downtown Baltimore. And I says, really? I'm at the corner of these 2 streets. He says, I'm at the corner of those 2 streets. And I said, really? Which corner? My address is such and such and such and such. My address is such and such and such and such. And then he says, I'm on the 9th floor. He said, I'm on the 10th floor. For 2 years, Greg and I had been working 1 floor apart from each other and never knew it.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And then, after we discovered this, and we went out to lunch one time, he had the nerve to get a new job. So that's okay.
That's true.
Anyway, so our topic for today is, well, we'll get to our topic for today in a minute. Normally at this point in time, we start out with our current events segment. However, just in interest of full disclosure, this episode is actually being filmed well in advance because my family is going to Florida. And so at the time you're watching this, I am burning up in sunny Florida, most likely getting sunburned. And so these 2 folks graciously agreed to come here ahead of time and film this one ahead of time. So obviously, we have no idea what the current events are going to be at the time we're actually filming this. Now, we talked about making it up, but they dissuaded me from that and said, no, we really shouldn't do that. So we don't know what the current events are, so there's no current event segment today. Also, next week is Independence Day, and so for that reason, there is not going to be an episode next week. But we will all be back here. Not all, they won't be. I will be. We'll be back here in 2 weeks with a new topic, so please make sure to join us then. All right, so that being said, we are going to jump right into our topic of the day. You guys ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, our topic for the day is, why are Christians reluctant to share their faith? And I want to share with the panel a study that I looked at ahead of time here from Lifeway Research. And this is relatively recent. I want to say it's within the past 5-6 years. And what Lifeway Research found is they said 80% of those who attend church 1 or more times a month do believe that they have a personal responsibility to share their faith. However, 61% of those people have not told another person about how to become a Christian in the previous 6 months, and 48% have not invited anyone. They haven't even invited anyone to church in the past 6 months. Now, what I found really interesting is not only that did 80% say, yes, we acknowledge that we do have a responsibility to do this, but 83% of them said, and we're not hesitant to let other people know that we're Christians. So we have a situation, at least according to this study, where people say, well, we know we're supposed to be sharing our faith. We have no problem with people knowing we're Christian, at least that's what they're saying, and yet they're not doing it. They're not actually sharing the faith. So, Liz, let me ask you a question. Why would that be?
So I can't answer for everybody in the world, but I can answer for myself where, as you mentioned in my intro, I've been with the federal government for about 30 years. It's going on 29 this October. And for us, we're told to keep that separate. We're not supposed to bring our faith, our beliefs into the workplace. We are pretty much shied away from that. And the reason why is because we're told we may offend somebody else who doesn't believe, or who doesn't believe the same way we do. So we're told to keep it home. And for us, it's very hard to bring that out. it's very, very difficult to have those conversations, whether it's at the lunch table or in the workplace.
It's funny because I saw that. I was in some of the articles I was reading this week, getting ready for this. I looked at some things about, what reasons the scholars, or so the powers that be out there, are saying that people aren't sharing their faith. And that was one of the ones that I saw. That one of the articles was just a series of quotes, basically, from people, and where they'd been asked, well, why do you think this is? And people had shared. And one of the ones I saw was very similar to that, where it says, well, in the workplace, and I can't remember if it was a government employee, it might have been, but it was somebody said the same kind of thing. It says that we're told not to do that. Now you say, I'm curious, because you say you're told not to do that. How explicitly are you told not to do that?
So I'll give you an example. My husband received a promotion in his job, and for us that means a pay raise. And he was told that because he reached this certain level, he was in management at the time, that he needed to stop wearing his Christian t-shirts.
Really?
Because the atheist in his office found it offensive for him to wear those t-shirts. Thankfully, my husband is a strong believer, and he said, well, she's offending me by asking me to take that off. So he continues to wear his t-shirts to this day, but that's the kind of stuff we get on a daily basis in our office.
That's interesting. It's a phenomenon that I've noticed too. And Greg, I'm curious if you've noticed this as well, where there's this notion in society now, it seems, that to even be exposed to something, to even see something, is offensive.
Sure.
Have you noticed that throughout your life? I'm curious.
Of course, and it's, in my opinion, this separation of church and state is such a myth that has been built up over, decades, you could argue 60 plus years, starting with pulling prayer out of schools in the early 60s and has continued from there. When you look at that phrase, separation of church and state, a lot of young people today assume that it's something found in the Constitution. It's nowhere in the Constitution. It was a letter that was written to then President Jefferson talking about an issue in Connecticut, I think, where I think it was a preacher that was worried that Connecticut was going to create its own state church or specific denomination, and he was worried about whether or not there was going to be any persecution against his denomination. And the president responded saying, no, we're not, that's not what we're about. But it was coming down to whether or not one denomination was going to be made the state religion. But we've sort of blown that up into not being allowed to express our faith in the public square, and that's exactly what the First Amendment protects us, gives us the right to do.
It's funny, there's something else I hear about when people raise that, where they try to say, there's separation of church and state. You ever heard that there's one line I hear repeated a lot is, our founding fathers. Our founding fathers weren't actually Christian. This isn't a Christian nation. Our founding fathers were actually deists. You hear that an awful lot. Sure. And I was reading something the other day that said, out of, I think it's, don't quote me the exact numbers, I think it's 55 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Out of the 55 of them, 51 were actually card-carrying members of mainstream Christian denominations.
Sure.
There were like 3 deists or something like that in the whole group. But people latch on. It's almost like a verification bias, where people will latch on to just whatever they think supports what they want to be true.
Well, not only that, you look at one of the first acts of Congress after the Constitution was enacted and we had the system set up. One of the first acts of Congress was to have Bibles printed and sent to all schools across the country.
But separation of church and state.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. People don't understand, I think. And because, candor, I'm a lawyer in my other job, so I have some experience in this field. And you're right, it wasn't there from the get-go. It's something that's evolved over time into this slogan now. But the people seem to forget the history of what we came from. That there was this church or this official state religion kind of situation, and that's what's being guarded against. We do have a freedom to belong to whatever religion we want in this country, but that doesn't mean that, like you're saying, Liz, doesn't mean that you're supposed to check your religion at the door. And let me ask you this, because I see, and I don't know if you've experienced, I see a real struggle with what you've talked about here. I know, for one, for example, have people come up to me and say, well, are you a Christian when you vote? When you're voting for office, you're supposed to vote, these candidates, you're supposed to set aside what their religion was. And this goes back to one of the biggest times when Mitt Romney was running for president, and there was some uproar about some people didn't like him being Mormon, and they were saying, well, do we separate that? And just not anything about Mitt Romney per se, but just one of the things that started making me think about is, but wait a minute, if who we are in our faith is really influencing us, our faith is not just something we do on Sundays, or we have a Saturday worship here too. Right. So Saturdays, it's supposed to influence who we are, and so our moral decisions and what we think is right and wrong is going to be influenced by that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, you're told, for example, to keep your religion out of your workplace. Is that even possible? I mean, granted, I guess you can say, okay, I won't say the name Jesus while I'm here at work during the day, but that's not really keeping your religion out of the workplace, because it still makes up who you are, doesn't it?
So it does, and for us, especially my husband and I, because we work at the same place, we met there. Mm-hmm. So for us, we don't mind. We just bring it up. It's just who we are and how we act. A lot of our decisions on whether or not we're going to go out for happy hour after work are based on the fact that we don't like to be drinking in public. We just don't do that. I won't say that I'm the perfect Christian, because I'm certainly not.
Find me one.
I know, exactly.
I know one, okay?
Yeah. But we're human, and we'll make mistakes, but we try not to come off as we're the perfect Christian. We need to be completely honest, and we need to bring in the Bible to work. We don't do that, but it's just really hard. It's really hard to come out and be such a proponent of the Bible in the workplace. It really is.
Now, I've seen some people, in some of the research I was doing ahead of time, where they're talking about, in your situation, being afraid. And one of the things people talk about being afraid of is, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. And I'm curious, because you're in more of correct me if I'm wrong, you're in more of a management position, is that right? True. Have you ever had any people or any reason to believe that there's anybody in your workplace? I'm curious, first of all, how do you deal with this in your workplace? Sure. And have you had people that have expressed any concerns to you, or that you've been afraid maybe are concerned that maybe I shouldn't be saying that because they're worried about maybe what you're going to do to them?
I'll put it this way. I try to show my faith in my actions, the way I treat people, the way I interact with people. People know that I go to church. People know I'm in a passion play. I bring it up in casual conversation. I don't hide that. But what I hope I'm doing is showing that, the way I react to people, the way I react to stressful situations, hopefully I'm showing my faith in the way I am, my temperament, and the way I am as a person. I'm sure there are people on my team that might feel uneasy or may question whether or not I'm looking at them differently. I'm sure there's homosexual people in my workforce. I'm sure there's people of different religions that are part of my team. But hopefully I'm coming across in a welcoming, humane way, so that they're not feeling threatened.
And I find that interesting, because you're right. I think there's almost a perception out there that people are threatened by Christians, and yet, if you understand the Christian faith, we're supposed to love everybody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I got to tell a joke, because I've told this joke before. Maybe you've heard me tell it before, but it's a fun. My wife's heard me tell this joke before countless times. There was a gentleman who was having marital problems, and he goes to his pastor, and he says, well, Pastor, I'm thinking of leaving my wife, and we're just not getting along anymore. And And the pastor says, well, what does Scripture say about how you're supposed to treat your wife? And of course, the guy knows where he's going with this, but you're supposed to love your wife. And he says, no, you don't understand, Pastor. Okay, I know Scripture says I'm supposed to love my wife, but it's like we're not even living in the same house anymore. I mean, it's just so cold. There's no talking. And she's like, she's no different to you than your neighbor. It's like, yeah, she's like just like the neighbor next door I never talked to. What's the Bible say about how you're supposed to treat your neighbor? And I says, okay, hold on. I see where you're going with this, but no, you've got to understand, Pastor. It's like, even when we do talk, we're bitter enemies. They're screaming, there's yelling, it doesn't stop. It's like, wow, that must be hard. Yeah, it is, Pastor. It's really hard. What does the Bible say about how you're supposed to treat your enemies? The point I guess I'm making here is that you're right, that we have this mentality out there that people might feel threatened just because you're a Christian. There's this idea of, people call Christians bigoted because of their viewpoints. And yet, if you really understand Christianity, we're supposed to treat people with love.
Absolutely.
That's where we're supposed to come from.
Yeah. But that speaks to some of, and we can get more into the cultural and societal persecution. And obviously, here in this country, you could argue we're dealing with first world persecution versus in other places around the world.
Egypt.
Absolutely.
Right.
Egypt.
Exactly.
Look at China. I mean, there's people that are hiding in basements worshiping in China. And, I could talk about, why we even have trade relations with a country like that, or Saudi Arabia. So those are obviously third world persecutions that, people pay attention to. And I'm sure that plays into why some people choose not to speak up about their faith. But even in our country, if you believe what the Bible says to be true, and I believe that, God breathed it, there's things in there that speak clearly about right and wrong. My faith grew when I realized that, it's black and white. There's not much gray area. God, through the Ten Commandments and through Jesus, tells us what's right and wrong. And if we speak out about that with love, we're easily persecuted in a first world way.
I want to pick up something that you mentioned a second ago, Liz. You mentioned that I'm not a perfect Christian, and there was something you said, and I can't remember exactly how you put it, but it made me start thinking about something else that I saw when I was getting ready for today. One of the big excuses, I hate to use that word, but maybe it's the right word to use, that people use for not sharing their faith is that they don't feel knowledgeable enough. They don't feel that they know enough about their Bible, maybe they're new to Christianity, is that they just came to Christ within the past year or so, and so they go, I'm not ready to do that yet because I don't know enough. What would you say to someone if they came to you and said, I don't feel like I know enough to really share my faith? What would you say to them?
I would say join the club. I have a bachelor's degree from Liberty University in biblical studies, biblical and theological studies, and I get phone calls all the time when we do church-wide studies. And, well, is this what it says in the Bible? I don't know. I have to look it up. And let me get out my textbooks. Let me get out my school stuff. You just, we're all the same. We all have to learn, and I think that's why, especially here at Trinity, we do the Bible studies, because we know we don't know everything word for word.
But I would argue this is not your normal Lutheran church. One of the things that I was thinking about earlier also is when you look at what Martin Luther was trying to do with the 95 Theses, and he was looking to correct wrongs within the Catholic Church. So he was looking at trying to make a statement about this is what we believe, but that didn't necessarily revolve around missionary work. That sort of evolved out of other Protestant denominations later on, and Catholics to a certain degree. Couple that with, when you think about most of the Lutherans in America stem from German and Scandinavian backgrounds, and love stereotypes or hate them, the reality is a lot of those cultures are a little more stoic and less expressive as opposed to other parts of the world. So putting that together, it's not natural for a lot of people in our circles to be as expressive.
Yeah, but, I mean, Pastor Paul jokes around sometimes in the worship services. Like, I know it's not right. Lutherans, you don't see Lutherans raising their hands in worship, and yet you do here. You do.
That's why I say we're not the normal Lutheran church. And I say that all in a good way.
Yeah, so the background is more stoic, you think, of this particular denomination that we don't necessarily have here. So I got to say, when I was looking at this and I was thinking of people saying, well, I don't think I know enough. I don't know. I said, well, wait a minute, do you know the gospel? Okay? Because that's reasonably simple, and theoretically, you should know the gospel if you're becoming a Christian, right?
Right.
So if you know the gospel, you know enough to start sharing it. That's kind of the weapon. Now, that does not necessarily mean that we don't have an obligation to continue to grow in Christ and to learn more. That's part of what sanctification is all about. And the Bible says, to love God with all your heart, soul, and with your mind. And so there is, I think, an obligation to do that. But I think people are... That's why I think I used the word kind of subconsciously, but I said excuse, right? Is that what I said? Because I kind of said it before it came to mind, is that I think people, it's like, you do know the gospel, and so you can certainly tell people about it. And what I do find, like you mentioned before at your workplace, that you like to show your faith through your actions. And I got to say that I'm going to sound like I'm self-serving because she's in the room, but one of the people that's really, really good at that is my wife, okay? So that she is very good at showing the love of Christ. And what I found, and I'm not going to use names, but there was one particular young lady that came into our life a little while ago, teenager, and very much needed that love. And she definitely latched on to my wife more than she did to me. And she showed her the love of Christ when she really, really needed it. And it got to the point where, that young lady eventually then came back to her and said, that, I don't remember exactly how she put it, but she wanted to know more, and she wanted to become more involved. And then now they've had a number of really, really, I think, meaningful conversations, and she's coming to Christ herself. And so that's a kind of an example of how this can all come about, I think. And people, I think, put too much pressure on themselves, say, I don't know enough. Really? Do you know how to love someone? Do you know what the gospel is? Then you know enough. Go out and start with it. And start with it. So another thing I'm going to throw out there is people say that they don't, one of the things that came up a lot in the articles that I was looking at was not enough training. That people say, so I know how to love someone, and I know what the gospel is, but how do I even start talking to someone? It's like I'm sitting in the room next to somebody. I know that they're not a believer in Christ. How do I even start the conversation? And I don't remember who talked last, so I'm going to turn to Liz and say, what would you say? Somebody comes up to you and says, how do I even start the conversation? What would you tell them?
Well, it goes back to your statement that we're supposed to just love people, and Greg even mentioned doing it through your actions. It's just being welcoming to that person that comes to sit down. We don't have to bang our chest and another stereotype, the Bible thumper. We don't have to be like that. We can just say, well, Ken, it's nice to see you. Let me tell you, what's been going on in your life. And you have that casual conversation. That casual conversation shows that love that we're supposed to elicit to everybody. And we're supposed to provide that. And we're a listening ear. So Ken sits down next to me, maybe Ken's having trouble, and you just start talking. And you're showing that love, and that's how you bring it out, and that's how you just do it.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. I'm going to turn now to Greg here because I forgot where I was. So now I'm back on track now. I'm back on course. So let's say that you got somebody in your life that maybe you don't know as well. And so like what Liz is saying, well, you've got somebody, they've got some kind of issue going on maybe, and you can show them love and say, hey, how do we deal with this? Let them know that you're there for them. What would you do if you had somebody who maybe you didn't know maybe you don't know exactly what's going on in their life so much. Maybe you want to, but how do you start with somebody like that?
I think that if you're trying to start, just a very generic conversation with someone, once you get past the weather, it's natural.
How are the Orioles doing? How about those O's? Yeah.
It's natural for people to talk about challenges or concerns in their life. And if that happens, then it's kind of natural for people to talk about maybe they're stressed out about something, and you can sort of direct that into saying, maybe you don't have some type of peace in your life. And that's why when I talked about pulling faith out of the public square, I would argue that 2 generations ago, more people knew just about the story of salvation and peace through that, where unfortunately there's a lot of young people that you call them unchurched or anti-church because of what indoctrination has been, put in front of them, through the school system and the TV, that it's easy just to bring up the fact everybody has access to free peace. And that'll catch their attention, and you can talk about, well, this is how I get my peace, and there's ways to extend the conversation from there.
Good.
But you have to get past that fear, because that fear is that I'm going to be persecuted,
Sure.
whether it's by word or by actual violence like we're seeing in the world, just by opening your mouth.
Yes.
You offer free peace to somebody, they're either going to be welcoming to it, or they're going to shut you down and walk away.
Yeah.
So you have
No,
to be...
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
One thing I read recently that addresses that, and again, it's one of these things we have to come over get over the feeling. You're right, and it's hard. Some of it just takes courage. But one thing that was a good reminder for me was when someone rejects you in that context, it's important to remember they're not rejecting you.
True.
They're rejecting Christ. They're rejecting the message. It's not necessarily now. As a practical matter, may feel that way, especially if it's someone we're close to. Your family, close friends. You don't want to lose those relationships. I understand, and that's difficult to overcome. One thing that I did want to mention is that one way I think a lot of people can overcome those fears is if they have, for lack of a better word, a game plan. And I use that word because it's Greg Kokel's word. It ties right what I want to say. In other words, if you know and you have a strategy, for lack of a better word, you have tactics, you know what you want to start, you have some idea about how to start a conversations, that may help ease the anxiety a little bit. And we do actually have a class coming up here starting June 15th, July, completely wrong. July 11th, I think it is. It's a Tuesday. Coming up soon. And what I'll do is maybe I'll put the promo ad for that at the end of this video so that if I got the dates wrong, just ignore what I say here and look at the ad that I'm going to tag on to the end of this. I want to say it's July 11th through August 15th. It's every Tuesday night from 7 o'clock to 8:30. We're going to be teaching, it's based on this book by Greg Kokel. This book is called Tactics, a Game Plan for Discussing Your Christian Convictions. Now, what we're actually going to be working from is this just came out, I want to say in April. Greg Kokel came out with a study guide that it accompanies his tactics book, but it's kind of neat. Well, it's got highlighting all in mind, but it's got little fill-in-the-blank exercises and group things that you can do, and it's designed to be taught in 6 sessions, and so we're not going to be using exclusively this. We're going to talk about some other things as well, but this is the basis we're going to use. And the study guide is called Tactics, a Guide to Effectively Discussing Your Christian Convictions. And that's what it's about. It's about giving people maybe some of the courage to know, hey, here's how you would go about starting these types of conversations, and here's how you manage your way through these conversations, so that if you know that, it's kind of like, let's say, one of the biggest fears people have is public speaking. Liz, do you like public speaking?
No, I do not.
You do not. So you have to give a speech now, okay? Now, I'm asking you, what would you prefer, to not have anything written down whatsoever and have to go up there and wing it, or to have your speech written out in front of you so all you got to do is read it?
Well, I would rather have a speech or a script already ready so I can memorize it and get it in front of me, in front of my mind, so I know what I'm up against.
Yes, it's not going to eliminate your anxiety entirely, but it's going to help if you know what you're going to do going in. That's what this course is about. So, and there'll be information, like I said, at the end.
Great.
So, are you going to be there?
Sure.
You really? You haven't signed up yet?
Oh. I will.
I put pressure on him. He was in the first class I ever taught.
See, we didn't have a cue card here that said,
That's right.
say yes.
That's okay. I don't think we're going to film that. So if you're not there, people that are watching now will know that you're there. Any other closing remarks? Any other closing thoughts that we haven't touched on that you'd want to share?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for having me and asking me to be here.
Well, thank you
and
for
enjoy
being
your vacation in Florida.
Hopefully, I'm enjoying it right now while people are watching. Any other closing thoughts from you?
No, just appreciate the opportunity and in the forum, and I hope other folks get the opportunity to do as well.
Well, I appreciate you both coming here today, because if you weren't here, I'd be talking a lot and I'd have 2 empty chairs next to me. So that's going to be all for today. And again, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Trinity Talk Live. Just by way of reminder, again, there is no episode next week. Next week is Independence Day, so we're not going to be here, but we will be back the following week. And if you could, hey, it really helps us out if on our YouTube channel, on this video on the YouTube channel, if you can go ahead and click the like button. That's a thumbs up button. That actually helps the video get distributed to other people. The more likes it gets, the more people get served up with this video as options and suggestions that they should watch it. And also, if you could please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That not only helps us out, hopefully that helps you out, because it will also let you know you can set your settings to get notifications of when we post new videos. Trinity Talk Live is not the only thing we've got here on the Trinity Joppa channel. There's lots of other things, so please feel free to explore that as well. Thank you very much. Thank you again to my guests here today, and we hope to see you next time. God bless. They say one of the biggest fears faced by Americans today is the fear of public speaking. So it really shouldn't be all that surprising that one of the biggest fears faced by American Christians is the fear of sharing our faith. But Jesus told us to go and make disciples of all nations. So how are we supposed to do that exactly? And when people talk to me about sharing their faith, I hear a lot of the same fears. Oh, I'm too new to Christianity, or I don't know my Bible well enough. What if someone asks me a question that I don't know the answer to? Or, I don't want to get into an argument. What if I were to tell you that you don't need to be afraid about any of those things? Scripture tells us to always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks us for a reason for the hope that we have, but to do this with gentleness and respect. I'm here to tell you that not only is this possible, but it's probably a whole lot easier than you think. My name is Ken Coughlin, and from July 11th through August 15th, I'll be teaching a class on how to engage people comfortably and graciously about your Christian faith. You'll learn how to start conversations, how to recognize some of the classic mistakes that people often make when discussing spiritual topics, how to gracefully handle someone who is perhaps getting a little too aggressive with their tone, but most of all, how to do all of this in a friendly, disarming manner. The class will meet every Tuesday night from 7 o'clock till 8:30 p.m. at Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church in Joppa, Maryland. We'll be basing a lot of what we learn on Greg Koukl's book, Tactics, a guide to effectively discussing your Christian convictions. Now, there is no cost to enroll, but if you have the ability to purchase Greg Koukl's recently published study guide to accompany his Tactics book, then I'd highly recommend it. But you're welcome to attend either way. There is a link in the notes of this video showing where you can find that study guide. Register for the class today at trinityjoppa.org and share this video to tell your friends about it. Look, Christians everywhere are worried about this today. So wouldn't it be great if we could all come together and work through this as a group? How about we let God use us to give the world something to think about? I hope to see you on July 11th. Thank you.
In your word we will find